representation in Missouri and Kansas, 2 in South Dakota, 4 in Iowa, 6 in Minnesota, 2 in Wisconsin, which he took the ferry across Lake Michigan to come into Michigan. He's giving 3 presentations here in Michigan, 1 last night, tonight here of course, and I should say 4 because he's given 2 presentations tomorrow, and 3 more to come in Ohio. And then I think his gas tank is empty and he's had enough for a while. Philip Haney studied Arabic culture and language while working as a scientist in the Middle East before he was hired as a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security in 2003. He became an armed Customs and Border Protection officer. He served 2 tours of duty at the National Targeting Center, and he was quickly promoted to its advanced targeting team. For more than 40 years, he has specialized in Islamic theology and the strategy and tactics of the global Islamic movement. Recently retired in July of 2015, Mr. Haney bravely tried to say something about the people and organizations that threatened the nation. His intelligence information was eliminated, and he was investigated by the very agency assigned to protect the country. The national campaign by the DHS to raise public awareness of terrorism and terrorism-related crime, known as "If you see something, say something," effectively has become "If you see something, say nothing." In his book, See Something, Say Nothing, Mr. Haney exposes just how deeply the submission, denial, and deception run. Mr. Haney's insider eyewitness account, supported by eternal memos and documents, exposes a federal government capitulating to an enemy within and punishing those who reject its narratives. The foreword in Mr. Haney's book was written by Michelle Bachmann, former member of the U.S. Congress and part of the House Select Committee on Intelligence. And her ending paragraph states, "I thank God for this nation, and I thank God for patriots like Philip, a federal employee who risked much during his exemplary career to keep you and me safe from terrorists. Philip Haney is a national treasure. His discoveries deserve the thanks, respect, admiration, and appreciation of every American citizen. As a civilian and as a former member of the U.S. Congress, I say thank you, Philip Haney, for risking your all to keep our nation safe. You've demonstrated courage under fire." Let us give thanks, and let's welcome Mr. Philip Haney. We're going to have to switch HDMI cords here, so just be patient with us, and we're going to switch it over to Mr. Haney's laptop. And there's cards and pencils on the table. If you'd like to write out a question, make it a quick, brief question, put it at the end of the table. Right before Mr. Haney finishes speaking, we'll collect them and then ask him the questions when it's open for question and answer. And put a little headline on the question too, what it might be pertaining to, so we can kind of categorize it. So let's welcome again Mr. Philip Haney.
I'm going to take this microphone out of here, I hope. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Glad you're here.
You wouldn't believe all the venues that I've talked in along the way. There's a few on the map that didn't make it on the map. I was in Nebraska too, and a lot of radio along the way, and there's only really one reason why I'm here, because you're here. And our country was founded on a principle of government of the people, for the people and by the people. And I'm going to do all that I can, high speed, low drag. Between now and the day of the election, I plan to be in Nebraska, Omaha, and I hope that we're going to be doing high fives and fist bumps and hallelujahs on that night. That's what I hope for. I'd like to start out by reading some things from the Declaration of Independence. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitled them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. In other words, God instituted government, and that we are by default expected to be a part of it and not take it lightly. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. We also learned that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. In other words, it's what I call the Popeye principle. I stands all I can stands, and I can't stands no more. But there's a phrase in here that really caught my eye 2 or 3 events ago, and I think it's fair that we can base a lot of insight on what we're seeing in our world today, especially in our country, on these simple words. It's the right of the people to alter or abolish it. And what struck me was that our adversaries, and that's how I characterize it, allies and adversaries. I don't characterize it as Democrats and Republicans. I characterize it as constitutional allies and constitutional adversaries. That our constitutional adversaries are seeking to simply alter or abolish the form of government that we live under. It's called hope and change, among other things. And then along the way, they find a natural ally. A lot of people wonder how in the world could American citizens, even if they do have a D after their name, form an alliance with an ideology that plainly states its intention is to overthrow us and put us into submission, if not subjection, to what is called Sharia law. And I realize that the reason why they are become natural allies is because they both intend to alter or abolish the form of government that we live under. But they're for malevolent reasons, not for constitutional procedural reasons. And so we've come to the point where it is becoming face-to-face. And that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Strategy and tactics of the global Islamic movement. Operative verbs from the Quran. Why am I going to focus on operative verbs or words at all? Because has anyone ever heard the statement from the government that words matter? Well, okay then, if words matter, then why don't we study some words while we're at it? I would like to illustrate a simple way of the distinction between strategy and tactics. And you may be wondering why it's even important at all. Why is there a difference? And if there is, why does it matter? Well, the reason why is there is a very important distinction between strategy and tactics. And I will illustrate it by asking, when we're all finished tonight, what will our strategy be? Each person here, what will your strategy be when we're finished tonight? It's actually quite simple. Go home. That's your strategy. It is actually easy to define it, what your strategy will be for the night. Go home. But what is complicated, I call it kaleidoscopic, is how will you do it? Meaning, there's a lot of different ways you could get home. Any one of you has probably 3, 4, or more different ways you can get home, depending on all the circumstances of the moment. That's the tactics. The tactics are how you do something. The strategy is what you intend to do. What is your goal? In the case of the Islamic movement, the goal, as stated by the Quran, and as you will see, is to implement Sharia law everywhere on the face of the earth, not just in the Middle East. If we were all here for a month, in exactly the same place where everyone is sitting right now, and we were all released when the school bell rings at 9:27, exactly the same time, no one would ever get home at the same moment in time in any of that month. Every day you got home would be a little bit different time. Why would that be? Because all the variables and intervening factors along the way that force you to adjust your tactical approach to your never-changing goal, which is what? To get home. So nothing that you do is random. Nothing that you do is arbitrary. Your purpose never changes. It's always the same, to get home. It's just how you go about doing it. I would like to have you all pretend, let's play a role, that you're one of my colleagues as a subject matter expert. That's what we're called, subject matter experts. We call ourselves SME. That your supervisor just gave you a printout, or even this animated version of this particular icon here, and said, Bob, I want you to tell me and give me a briefing in a half an hour. What does this icon mean, and does it pose any risk to our national security? So let's go ahead and just call out, what do you see in this animated icon? A couple swords. Okay.
A globe.
What else? A globe. Okay. How do you know it's a Quran? The way that it opens, that's a real good indicator. The symbols on it as well. Okay, what else do we see?
Blood on the sword.
Some what look to be Arabic language, right?
Right.
So let's take a look at it and analyze, what does it actually mean? What is the message that this animated icon is sending to us? So let's start with, what do the swords mean? Why two? The swords mean implementation, promotion and implementation of Sharia law externally, and enforcement of Sharia law internally. And it is a symbol of the spectrum of tactical approaches to accomplish this goal, culminating in the most direct form of tactical implementation, which is by the force of the sword. Do you see any exclusion zones in the North America? When it comes on around again, look real carefully. Do you see a big X that America is off limits?
No.
So if by this icon it is not off limits, what do you have to assume that the people who created this icon intend to express?
Worldwide domination.
Worldwide. Okay, what about the words? Do words matter?
Yes.
Okay, if words matter, then why don't we just go ahead and find out what these words mean? Since they put them on there, there must be a reason for that. So let's find out what those words mean. Well, I just happen to be here, so I'll help you. On the right hand, in the middle there, the white word on the right is called Al-Ikhwan. The one on the left is Al-Muslamin. That means the brethren of the Muslims, and or you could just plainly say the Muslim Brotherhood. How many of you knew that this was the icon of the Muslim Brotherhood before we even started? Not too many, but now you do. And down below there's another word in the yellow font, and that verb is wayauda, which means prepare. It's derived from Quran 860, all on fall, the spoils of war. It is the most violent chapter in the entire Quran, talking about the obligation to conquer and plunder the lands of the unbelievers. The entire chapter is devoted to jihad and conquering and plundering the resources of the non-Islamic world. Would that include maybe us?
Yes.
Do you think that maybe welfare, fraud, and abuse might be one form of doing this? Is it working?
Yes.
Is it exhausting the budgets of small communities?
Yes, it is.
Right. It is working because according to the Quran, Sharia-compliant Muslims have the right to plunder the resources of non-believers, which would include us. Now that word down in yellow, wayauda, that's a verse 860 from Al-Anfal, chapter 8. It says, prepare to terrify your enemies and defeat them. So you put all that together, and let's go back to the Quran for just a minute. If the Quran has been deliberately and intentionally placed as in a prominent position in this icon, then what would that imply? That this is authorized by the Quran. That this strategic and tactical picture that we see here is actually derived from Quranic teachings. Does that contradict the incessant mantra that Islam is a religion of peace? Is there anything in here that you would say and feel comfortable with associating with the concept of peace? No. Actually, Islam is a religion of peace. Comma, pause for effect. That's what we say in law enforcement. Just not right now. Why is it not just right now? It's because ideologically, Islam is a religion of peace, but it will never be one until all opposition to the implementation of Sharia law has been removed from the face of the earth. And then it will be a religion of peace. So when they say that, meaning apologists, they're only telling you half the story. They never bother to finish the rest of the sentence, which is quite common, not only among Islamic apologists, but also with our current administration. And I'll give you a good example. Remember the whole fiasco with the iPhone in San Bernardino? Going back and forth with Apple and FBI about trying to get the contacts that were in the iPhone? Well, have you heard anything at all since they got it? Anything? Why do you suppose that is? They certainly don't want to discuss what they found in the iPhone. What would that be, do you suppose? Well, what it is all the context of the people that Syed Farouk knew right here in the Inland Empire. That's what they call it out west in California. The area between San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Bernardino is called the Inland Empire. He had contacts in his phone of all the people that knew him. So what did the FBI do to falsely reassure us that everything was okay? They put out a public statement and said there was no evidence in the iPhone list that he was associated with any foreign terrorist organizations. Do you remember that? Okay, everybody, just go back to sleep. There's no affiliation with foreign terrorist organizations. But what's the other half of the sentence they didn't bother to complete? His association with the networks here. And that, my friends, is why I got in so much trouble. Because I'm the one that pointed, among a few others, that pointed out that there is a network operating right here in the United States that is no different in any form or substance to the same networks that are operating in the rest of the world. So we are being misled, misinformed, and allowed to come to conclusions that are really not true. And they never bother to correct these false notions that they are deliberately and intentionally passing on to us. For example, Remember Bergdahl's father in the Rose Garden. Remember the Con at the DNC. I call it the Con, and you will see why in a minute. Or how about mugging for the camera? Omar Mateen's father's right behind Hillary Clinton. And all the false narratives about the Benghazi attack. What is that supposed to do? It's supposed to create an association in your mind, and this is how it works. American citizen, Muslim, looks okay and ordinary. Therefore, by default, it's impossible that these ordinary individuals that are Muslim Americans can be affiliated with terrorism. I call it the John Gotti effect. You go to court and you look at John Gotti, a real smooth and attractive individual with charm and personality, and it's virtually impossible psychologically for you to see that he's a cold-blooded murderer. And that's the intent of it, is to influence the jury in those kind of trial cases. Well, our adversaries, remember I said allies and adversaries, are deliberate and intentionally creating false images that they market by the mass media right in front of us. It's like a toxic gas comes through that door over there, and just like in the monster movie, starts going around on the floor. If it touches you or you breathe it in, it turns you into a zombie, a social zombie. It can't think for itself, and that's one of the problems with the education system of America. We've lost our ability to think in the abstract. We don't even know how to ask questions anymore. So let's go on with the Muslim Brotherhood, and look, we just saw their icon. Now let's look at their motto. Their motto is, Allah is our objective. The Prophet is our leader, not George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or even Obama. The Quran is our constitution, plainly stated. Jihad is our way. Dying in the way of Allah is our highest aspiration. Allahu Akbar. Guess who said that when he was killing people in the nightclub in Orlando? Omar Mateen. Why did Loretta Lynch redact that from the transcript? She said it was because she didn't want us to be re-victimized. That's what she said. But who is really being victimized by their efforts to purge everything related to the nature of Islam from the public record? We are. Allahu Akbar is what he said while he was on the phone on 9/11, simply because he knew it would be recorded. And he was recording his essential last will and testament. He wanted the world to know exactly what he was doing and why he was doing it. And the reason why they deleted or redacted Allahu Akbar from the transcript is because the administration's narrative has been, for the last few years, that Allahu Akbar is simply a term of respect, that it has nothing whatsoever to do with jihad or violence of any kind at all. And so for him to be shouting this while he's killing people was a direct contradiction to the prevailing narrative of the administration. So how did they resolve the dilemma? Rather than explaining or maybe coming to terms with the fact that their policies are incorrect at best and leading to the death of people at worst, erase the information. And how do I know that's what they do? Because I was one of the people that they started with clear back in the year 2006, 10 years ago. They started in a pyramid kind of thing, and the people up at the top, I'll say just for the sake of the illustration, not that we were so special or different than anybody else, we just happen to have a combination of skills and experience and interest and desire that put us into that position. And so what the federal government did is it came after every single one of us that were in law enforcement agencies like FBI or CIA or Department of Defense, or my own agency, Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, and came after us and picked us off one by one. Because once we were gone to contradict the narrative, then they had an open field and they advanced very rapidly, just like in the war movies, where you take the wall and then you advance and take the house. And that's what they did. And now it's diffused all the way through our domestic and our foreign policy. And how to tie this all together? The people that they brought in to be the consultants and advisors on domestic and foreign counterterrorism policy are the people of that icon, the Muslim Brotherhood. The administration is saturated with the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood, and every time you turn around, you see evidence of it if you know what you're looking at. And this might be a good time to use an illustration. You all see the water bottle? It's an ordinary water bottle. This is not a trick question. There are three things in the water bottle. They're distinct from one another. One of them, I'll give you the clue, is the water. So what are the other two elements in this water bottle? Air is the second one. What is the third one? It's not anything to do with the water or the air. It's a totally separate thing.
Pressure?
No, not pressure. No. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. Maybe if I hold it up, you'll get the clue. To the light. It's light. Oh, it's obvious once you know it, right? Well, that's what counterintelligence is recognizing things that are right in front of you. And I'm going to show you some examples, and I'll hold the water bottle up maybe again or twice to show you. Here's an example of what's standing right in front of you, and unless you have eyes to see it, you won't see it, but once you do see it, you never will not see it again. And I would venture to say that everyone here will never look at an ordinary water bottle quite exactly the same again, because you're going to remember this little illustration about recognizing what is right in front of you. And the fact that we haven't been seeing everything that is literally right in front of us has been an advantage to our adversaries, because they never obviously bother to point out that there's more to this picture than what meets the eye. Sharia law self-defines itself. By the way, I was investigated by my own government 9 times. Once at the end of the Bush administration for writing an open source article called Green Tide Rising, Hamas Ascends. You can still look it up on the website Front Page Magazine. It was written in March of 2006. It was an analysis of what was going to happen vis-a-vis the election of Hamas in the Gaza Strip. If you go back and look at it now, you will see that it could have been written yesterday. It's very accurate. It's still holding water after 10 years. I got investigated by CIA contractors. Actually, they didn't investigate it. They turned me into my headquarters, DHS in Washington, D.C., and said that no one could have written the article like that unless they had access to classified information. So therefore, they assumed that I must have accessed it, and they used the word, I forget what the word was, not integrity, unethically access it and publish it on an open website. They never asked me how I came to the conclusions. They just assumed, apparently, that I couldn't have had that background or knowledge without having access to classified information. So after 11 months, I was investigated and exonerated, found no wrongdoing. But why would a Customs and Border Protection officer who took the vow to protect his country from threat, both foreign and domestic, be investigated by CIA and DHS for writing an open source article about a globally designated terrorist group called Hamas? It doesn't make any sense, does it? By the way, I'd like to know and ask, how many people in the room have taken the vow to protect our country from threat, both foreign and domestic? That's great. You should give them a hand of applause. How many people in the room feel that even though they may not be in active duty any longer, that their vow is also retired, that it is no effect any longer? There's no one here that feels that way, is there? I would like to suggest that all of us in the room take, and I'm only saying it in an informal, mental way, take the vow as a citizen to protect our country from threat, both foreign and domestic. And that every day going forward from now on, when you wake up in the morning, as we say, put your gear on, and when you turn the handle of that door to go out, you are on duty. That's how cops look at the world. And that's how military personnel look at the world. As soon as you go out, you are on duty. We have a 2.5+ month window right now to help change the country in a way that is going to be a disaster. It's obvious if we don't intervene. If all we got was a breather for the next 4 years, it would be a relief. Wouldn't you agree? So, therefore, your duty, as according to the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, is to maintain the awareness that this is a government of, for, and by the people, and do your part. That's your responsibility. And urge other ones too. If you're having doubt, not you, people that you meet have doubts about whether they should vote, just remind them that even biblically, governments are instituted by the Lord, by the Creator. And according to the Constitution is the same. We are not allowed to schlep our way through life in a state of ignorance. We're supposed to be representing an eternal kingdom as citizens, model citizens of the country that we live in now. And a simple requirement is to participate in the management of your own government. You're not authorized to disengage. Sharia law is a legal system governing Islam derived from the Quran, the Hadith, the tradition. By the way, a benign word, tradition, except when you include things like female genital mutilation. That's here in the United States. They're not flying the girls out anymore. They're bringing the cutters here. And they're operating within the communities because it's according to Sharia law that they should mutilate the genitals of young girls so that their passions will be subdued and that they can be controlled by their husbands. If you didn't know that, now you do. Sharia is a compilation of moral, civil, and religious law as opposed to any human legislation except for the U.S. Constitution. I forgot to put, no, actually, I didn't forget to put that in there. It does not exclude the U.S. Constitution and does not forget civil law at the state and federal level. And that is the points of conflict between Sharia and will be in civil law. A simple explanation will be polygamy, or is polygamy. Is polygamy legal in Michigan?
No.
Okay, I'm going to give you a homework assignment. You don't have to just focus on Michigan alone, but I want you to start paying attention to news and reports and listen for the first time that somebody somewhere says that they should legalize polygamy because to fail to do so will be an infringement on their religious rights. Watch and see. If we don't intervene, that's what will happen. What I'm trying to do is show you different ways of defining and evaluating the nature of Sharia law.